Hey everyone, welcome back to the Energy Blueprint podcast. This is Ari Whitten, and the Energy Blueprint podcast is the place to get all of the latest and greatest information about overcoming fatigue and enhancing your energy levels. Now today we have a very unique episode that's kind of really non-typical. Normally we are really geeking out on the science here and talking about all these different systems of the body and how the brain impacts fatigue and circadian rhythm and nutrition and mitochondria and all kinds of things like that. Now today we're going to talk about something quite a bit different from that. And this is, I'll get into more of the details around this later in the interview, but this is kind of an important missing piece of the puzzle for a lot of people and something that really isn't talked about in health circles. And it has to do with goals and purpose, which are kind of these, intangible concepts that most of us really are not thinking about when it comes to our health and energy levels. But one of the things that I've experienced is, and seen in hundreds of clients, is that when people have a strong purpose and when people are actively working towards goals that is aligned with that purpose, it changes their health and their energy levels profoundly. And there's actually an emerging body of research, which we're going to get into in this interview a little bit, around how things like this, how the pursuit of goals and how aligning yourself with a particular purpose influences genes that control, for example, your baseline inflammation levels, your immune function, how it influences motivational circuits in the brain, how it relates to risk of disease and longevity, and so many more things, how it relates to happiness. And I think on a less proven scientific level, how it relates to that feeling of waking up in the morning energized and excited about doing whatever you're going to do that day. And when you don't have purpose, when you don't have a strong purpose in your life, and you don't have a clear set of goals that's aligned with that purpose, it's draining. It leaves you apathetic. It leaves you lifeless. I think it stagnates your growth as a human. And as I mentioned before, it's influencing all of these genes, hundreds, if not thousands of genes that influence your energy levels, your immune function, your inflammation, risk of disease, and so on. So today I brought on John Assaraf, who is a New York Times bestselling author, and he's a behavioral and mindset expert. Who's really, his work is all about helping people release the mental and emotional blocks that prevent them from achieving their fullest potential. And this is someone he's known for his success in the business world, but he's also really partnering with a number of different world-renowned neuroscientists to uncover the secrets of rewiring our brains, our limiting beliefs, our self-image, all of these aspects of our brain function, which we're going to get more into in this interview, that limit our ability to grow as individuals, to achieve success, to align ourselves with our purpose, and create a clear set of goals to go about achieving that purpose. And his company Neurogym is developing some of the most advanced neuroscience-based brain training programs in the world to help individuals maximize their fullest potential. On a more personal note, as I'll talk about in a moment here, John is also a personal mentor of mine. He happens to live in the same town that I live in, and I actually used to be his personal trainer many years ago and nutritionist. And I used to show up at his house 4 times a week. The fancy big house in Rancho Santa Fe that was actually talked about in the movie The Secret. And in the process of doing that, he became somewhat of a big brother and a mentor to me. And I no longer work with him in that capacity as of the last many years. But since then, he's become a very close friend of mine and a mentor. And one of the wisest, happiest people that I've had the pleasure of knowing in my life. So without any further ado, let's get into the show. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Energy Blueprint podcast. This is Ari Whitten, and today I have a very special guest, John Assaraf, who is actually one of my closest personal friends and my mentor, the guy who I actually consider to be one of the wisest people I've ever known, and somebody who's kind of a big brother, a mentor to me, and in pretty much every aspect of life, actually, in relationships, in business, in just every aspect of life. You know, when I have a problem, this is the guy that I personally turn to and I like to have conversations with. And, you know, he's just been there for me many, many times over the years in many different aspects of my life. And, you know, it's just a pleasure to introduce you to a guy who I consider to be my mentor and big brother. So welcome, John. Thank you so much for joining me.
Ari, it's great to be with you. And I think I know why you like hanging around me. It's because you're learning from all of my mistakes.
I think that's a big part of it. But you know, a lot of people don't learn from their mistakes. A lot of people get stunted and
Right.
don't become better from them. And you've made a lot of mistakes, but you've become better at every step of the way. And you're genuinely one of the happiest and most energetic people that I know. And so, you know, you're obviously doing something right, if that's
Even a blind squirrel can find an acorn once in a while.
That's very humble of you. So we're going to talk about goal achievement today, purpose, goal achievement. And the question, I guess, at the beginning here is, what is the relationship of that to the energy blueprint? What is the relationship of that to health and energy? And, you know, I was actually over at John's house last night, and we were just chatting about a bunch of stuff, just catching up. And one of the things we were talking about is this link. And there's a bunch of stuff going on here in this relationship between health and energy and goal achievement and purpose. You know, just to get into a couple things here, there's actually research showing that having a sense of purpose is strongly linked with longevity and lower rates of disease, even things like lower rates of inflammation, stronger immune system, lower susceptibility to infections, and so on. And there's actually one interesting study where they looked at people who were trying to kind of create happiness in their life through what's called hedonic pursuit of goals, like pleasure seeking, versus eudaimonic goals, basically like giving to others and seeking meaning-based goals. And they found that even though both had kind of similar levels of overall happiness, there were huge differences in gene expression, in immune function and inflammation and so on, that kind of explain these links with, you know, having a sense of purpose and what kind of goals you have to overall health and longevity. And one of the things you brought up last night, John, is that it's kind of cyclical. You know, on the one hand, you know, if you don't have goals, it's hard to have energy. And then if you don't have energy, it's hard to actually pursue your goals. So there's just a ton of relationship here. And this is a really neglected area. You know, as health people like me, we're often talking about, you know, this nutritional supplement and this diet and this exercise regimen and this lifestyle factor and that lifestyle factor. But one of the big missing pieces is, if you don't have purpose, if you're not actively striving towards goals in your life, it's hard to be healthy. It's hard to be energized. So I wanted to just present that overall frame for everyone to understand this relationship between goals and kind of worldly success and goal achievement and overall health and energy levels. But wondering if you have any thoughts on that, John.
I have a lot of thoughts. As you were talking, you know, I was thinking about, you know, what does it really mean to have a purpose? And in French, there's something called raison d'être, the reason for being. And when you find, you know, why are you here? Like, are you here to be a great father, a great mother, a great husband, a great wife? Are you here to make a difference in the neighborhood? Are you here to offer your knowledge or skills or expertise to other people so that they're happier, healthier, wealthier? Everybody has that one or two things that is not obvious to them. This is the funny part. It's not obvious to them, but that's what they they naturally do. They naturally think about it. They naturally talk about it. They naturally behave in certain ways. But because it's their natural being, they don't think that maybe my purpose is tied to that. Mm. And my personal belief is nature does what she does maximally efficiently on time, every time, no exceptions, which means that you are perfect just the way you are to do whatever it is that you're supposed to do that inspires you, mm-hmm. That taps into your inner wisdom. You know, billions of years of evolution has created you, created me. And to find out, like, what am I here for? Because what I do know is we're not here just to consume. We're not here just to eat and poop. And we're not here for that. There's a higher expression that each one of us can get to. And when you can discover, like, what is it that I could do that gives my life the most meaning for me so that I feel like I'm not wasting this thing called life, then you activate motivational circuits. You know, then you activate this force that pulls you towards it. And the thing that I always share people is when people don't have motivation, what that is they don't have a motive for action, right? And when you have a purpose, then you have a motive for action. Because achieving goals, some of them are easy, but some of them are hard. Some of them, you know, we're challenged by. And you have to have that reason why you're going to get up when you don't feel like it. You have to have that reason why you're going to learn what you need to learn to get that next level. And so when somebody has a purpose, that purpose actually pulls you towards it. And when you don't have a purpose, then you tend to stagnate and you tend to not have the energy because there's nothing pulling you towards it, there's nothing moving the wheel forward.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. And, you know, those motivational circuits in the brain, I think, are very much tied to energy. You know, the raison d'etre, my French pronunciation sucks, but in Okinawa, one of the blue zones, one of the longest lived, healthiest populations in the world, they have something called ikigai, which translates to the same thing. And there's research showing that this is intimately connected with health and longevity. And I also think energy. I mean, you see people in these places that wake up, they're 90, they're 100 years old, and they get out of bed with energy. And I think so much of that is tied to that motive for action that you're talking about, you know, and that purpose. And one of the things that I see, I've seen a number of times, fairly commonly, is people who are unhealthy, people who are striving to recover their health, their energy levels, and have gone on, you know, I've seen every doctor in the world, all the specialists, and gone on a million different supplements and gone on all these crazy treatment regimens and all these crazy diets. But, you know, when I've asked them the question, what do you enjoy in life? What drives you? What is your purpose? What goals are you striving for? Oftentimes, I've had the experience of people saying, I don't know what I enjoy. I don't know what purpose I have. I don't really have any goals that I'm working towards. And there's something missing there that you can't find that in a supplement bottle or a prescription drug or any crazy diet. You have to get in touch with that purpose, and then you have to have goals that you're working towards to be achieving it. And there's something that is profoundly energizing and health promoting about that. So my question for you is, if somebody is in that situation, if they're like, well, I don't really know what my purpose is, and I don't really have any profound kind of goals that I'm working towards that are aligned with that purpose. What's kind of the first step that someone should take in that direction?
So here's the first step. Think, like, what do I enjoy doing? Why am I here? What would give me joy? What would make me feel like I'm contributing not only to my life, to my children, my spouse, my community, my friends? What would cause me to, be happy and enjoy my life? What I've discovered is a lot of people suffer from what I call as spiritual suppression. Now, talk about spiritual suppression, not in a sense of religious suppression. Talk about just remembering that within you are 100 trillion cells that are doing things that you can't even imagine they're doing. So the intelligence, the innate intelligence within you wants fuller expression and expansion, but there may be something either emotionally or mentally that's causing this suppression of the spirit. And so I suggest to all friends and my children and family is stop, just stop for a moment, take out a sheet of paper and go, if I could do anything I wanted, what would it be? If I could have one perfect day, what would that encompass? Like what would I do when I woke up? Who would I hang around with? What would I watch? What would I go explore? What would I discover? What would I do to be happy? What would I do to trade my life for that one day? So at the end of the day, I go, wow, that was so good. Can I do that tomorrow? And so take the concept of I need to think about goals and a vision out in the future, bring it to 24 hours. Write down, if I was to do this and this and this and this in 24 hours, that would be a perfect day. And then go and do that for one day. And then try and get as many of those days as possible in a row. So it might be once a month for now, then maybe once every 3 weeks, then once every 2 weeks, then once every week. And you start to see that when you do the things that inspire you and you stop doing the things that expire you, you are giving the life force that's within you a chance to express itself instead of suppress itself. And so that is where I always go first. Forget about 5 years, 10 years, 1 year. No, today, like today. And so what would you read? Who would you hang around with? What discussions would you have? Start with the simple stuff that allows you to get a framework, an essence of the things and the environment that would inspire you. Like I go to the beach all the time. Why? I'm inspired there. I go to the mountains all the time. I'm inspired there. So I want to be in those environments. I have thoughts and ideas in those environments.
Beautiful. I love it. So now I think let's transition from purpose. Let's say somebody, sorry, go ahead.
I just have one thing I want to mention earlier. At breakfast this morning, it came up, you mentioned something. It came up with my wife yesterday, and it's this. I want everybody to remember, since we're, on talk about energy blueprint, right? 100 trillion cells are nothing more than energetic, vibrating packets of energy called quanta. And if you know how to release that energy, which is you, then you have an abundance of energy. But if you are suppressing that energy, whether it's through thoughts, emotions, food, lack of X, Y, or Z, then you are suppressing that energy. And so the key is remembering, I am energy. And I can release it no differently than, in the space between my hands right now, there's enough energy to boil every ocean on the planet. When we take the nucleus of the molecules and the atoms and we release that energy, it's already there. So
yeah.
I just want to make sure I brought that up.
Yeah, beautiful. And yeah, I mean, I think we've kind of mentioned that indirectly, that there's some kind of magic that occurs when a person aligns themselves with their purpose. It's affecting different circuits of the brain. It's affecting gene expression, as I mentioned in the study. Now, I think there's also some magic around goal achievement. And especially if you have goals that are aligned with that purpose, and then you're working towards those goals, there's a number of studies that have just shown working towards goals that are, especially if they're meaningful goals, creates happiness. And that is, the crux of happiness is doing that. There's also magic in actually achieving those goals. And so what is that on the level of the brain when somebody has some little small win? They set a goal and then they achieve a goal. There's kind of a snowball effect that I think most of us have experienced, where we start to achieve one, another, and then we get on this roll and we're in this beautiful emotional state of happiness, and we're just feeling really good about our lives. So what's going on there?
Well, we're always seeking, most people are seeking to achieve what's my next level of X, Y, or Z. And so the very act of writing a goal down activates dopamine circuits in the brain. If you share it with a loved one or a friend, you're actually activating, oxytocin loop. And those are the feel-good neurochemicals in the brain. So we want more of those. When we actually do the work necessary to achieve the goal, then we're activating the neurochemistry of confidence and of being in motion towards our goals and dreams. So there's entire neurochemistry that happens in the brain that when we're in action, we feel the adrenaline, the endorphins, the dopamine, the oxytocin. Those are all the feel-good chemicals that are in most cases the move me forward towards type of neurochemistry. But when we have the neurochemistry of, well, am I smart enough to achieve that? Am I good enough to achieve that? What if I try this and I fail? What if I'm judged? What if I'm embarrassed? What if I'm ridiculed? Well, we're activating, or automatically those neural circuits are activated, and those are the chemicals that actually put the brake on. Motivation goes down, brake goes on. And for a lot of people, what happens, Ari, is they have one foot on the gas. I want this, I want this, I want this. Let's go and do this. But then they have another foot on the brake, and there's a lot of activity, but they're staying in place. There's a lot of noise, a lot of activity. The car is shaking, but it's spinning its wheels, not getting too far ahead.
Very interesting. So what are some of the roadblocks as far as why people don't achieve their goals? What's going on with that? What's stopping people from getting on that roll of kind of, that snowball effect of goal achievement?
Great. So just like your heart does a certain function or multiple functions, your lungs do certain functions, your legs, hands have certain functions, your brain and different parts of your brain has different functions. So when somebody sets a goal, they're using deductive reasoning, they're using imagination, and it releases some of the neurochemicals that feels good. But since the brain is wired for a couple of key things, number one is your safety first, right? So make sure you're safe, but the brain doesn't discern between something real or imagined. The non-conscious or subconscious part of it. So when you set a goal to achieve something you haven't achieved yet, the brain has to analyze what risk is there in you achieving that. So could you get emotionally hurt? Could you get financially hurt? Could you get physically hurt? Could you get spiritually hurt? So it analyzes what the risks are and the consequences of those risks in nanoseconds, and then brings to your consciousness this emotion of the risk. So it brings you the emotion of the risk. It brings you the self-talk of having doubts, having fears, anxiety, stress. And that is what the conscious brain does, working with the subconscious brain. If there is anything in the subconscious mind or the memory bank, something that you've read, something you've experienced, something that you've witnessed or seen on television, radio, through friends, that neural pathway or that memory exists in the brain, and your brain's responsibility is to go into that memory and bring forth any potential risk to you, as I mentioned just a moment ago. Anytime there's potential risk that's real or imagined, the brake goes on. Caution goes on. Caution goes on. That's an automatic, you don't even have to think about a response. And so there's a huge difference between setting goals and achieving goals. Setting goals happens at the conscious level of the brain. Achieving goals happens at the subconscious level of the brain. And what most people don't know, but science is now showing us, is if there's a disconnect between what your goals you have consciously and the programming you have subconsciously, you have neural dissonance or cognitive dissonance. And that dissonance is that tension between what you want and all of the things that are conditioned or programmed at the subconscious level. And what we need in order for us to have goal achievement, where we have momentum going forward, is we need neural coherence. Another way to think of it is, imagine that in your head, it's like an orchestra. All right, there's the conductor, and then there's the different musicians playing different instruments. And when they're in harmony, it's, oh my God, it's beautiful. All the instruments work well together, and everybody feels that likes whatever the type of music they're listening to. But when the instruments are not in harmony, there's chaos. Like, wow, that doesn't sound really good. Well, that's what happens in people's brains when they don't have coherence or harmony between their conscious goals and the old subconscious conditioning that they had.
Yeah, fascinating. You just reminded me of one study that I came across recently about goal achievement, and they were looking at goal achievement and how it correlates with different, not mental illnesses, but mental kind of tendencies, depression, anxiety, and so on. One of the things they found in people with chronic anxiety is that their goals, their pursuit of goals, was all about how can I achieve this goal in order to minimize my risk of a negative outcome. Okay, so their whole direction in life, as far as how they were what they were trying to achieve, was about how can I avoid so-and-so negative outcome.
Right.
Instead of how can I get this wonderful outcome that I actually want, it's all I want to do is just avoid this stuff I don't want. And it's fascinating how, something like anxiety and fear can direct our whole direction in life, and what kinds of goals we're actually pursuing, and whether those goals are actually going to lead to our happiness or just minimizing, the potential for something bad to happen. And so I think that's a really significant piece of this, is how fear and anxiety kind of relate to this whole goal achievement thing.
When we're talking about fear, I love dialoguing with you all the time, because you bring up some great points. When we're dealing with fear, there's over 50 different types of fears that we all have at one point or another. And what's beautiful about knowing that is, regardless of what the fear is, it triggers the exact same circuit. So there aren't 50 different circuits. The fear circuit is a fear circuit. And once you understand what fear you might have, what may be causing you the stress or the anxiety. See, anxiety and stress, in the way I think, is the equivalent of driving your car and a light comes up on your dashboard. Most people, you know what they do when that light comes on in relationship to it being stressed? They take a hammer and they hit the light so the light goes away. As opposed to going, oh, the light just went on. What's happening in the engine? What's happening in the engine? Stress, anxiety, panic, that's a response, something that's happening as a result of either external stimuli or an internal thought pattern, whether you're aware of it or you're not. So the effect that we call stress or anxiety is a signal. All it is a signal, but we as humans have never been taught. What are your 6 core emotions? How do they feel, in relationship to each other? Do you know how to turn one on, turn one off? Most people go, no. I go, well, let me ask you a question. What do you think a Hollywood actor or actress learns how to do on demand? They learn how to get really angry. Like, oh my God, that was so freaking funny. I can't believe, right? You can on demand flip the switch from one emotion to another, which means if you can learn how to recognize the effect of what's happening in here, you can go, I'm in this vibration that's unpleasant. Or I'm in this vibration that, I don't like this. Do you know how to let go of that? Do you know how to activate and deactivate the circuits in your own brain? And I know the answer for most people is no. And that's because we've only learned most of the stuff that we know about the human brain in the last 20 years. And in the last 5 years, if you think about 2.5 million years, we've been walking on Earth in one form of, human capacity or another. But in the last 5 years, we've learned more than the 2,395,900 whatever years. And so we're learning about the circuits. We're learning about fear. We're learning about anxiety. We're learning about self-confidence. We're learning about what motivates us, what doesn't, what stresses us out, what causes us to be elated and happy, and what causes us to be depressed and anxious. And we're learning more now than we ever have. And the reason I'm so passionate about the brain is it holds the answers and the keys to unlock our brain's hidden potential. And that's the power, right? When you understand how to use your brain just a little bit better, the growth of your personal life is exponential.
So how does one begin to do that? Let's say someone is in that chronic state of fear, chronic state of anxiety, and maybe they're paralyzed. Maybe they don't even have any goals they're working towards because the fear of negative outcomes is so strong that they don't want to work towards anything for fear of disappointment, or that the goals they have set for themselves are really more about kind of how can I avoid a negative outcome rather than how can I create the kind of life I want for myself.
So earlier we talked about, the brain's number one responsibility is safety. When we are in an environment that we feel safe, even if we're miserable, depressed, anxious, sad, if we feel safe there because we've got comfortable there, the brain's responsibility is to keep you in your homeostasis or comfort zone. So the first thing to understand, if somebody is frozen with fear, they may have created a default mode network of fear. And that's the way they operate every single day. So the first thing to understand is there's hope for you. Second thing is it's not your fault. The brain is really, really, really smart. But then you have to give it a little nudging to reactivate some of its genius once a pattern is developed. And we operate our entire lives, mostly on patterns that have become ingrained and encoded in the subconscious mind. So the first thing to be aware is if you happen to be frozen with fear, or if you happen to have this, this emotional pattern that's destructive instead of constructive, that's disempowering instead of powerful, expiring versus inspiring. So if you happen to be that person, first thing you could do, really, really simple, I'll give you two, what I call our innercises. So exercises are for your muscles, what innercises are for your neuromuscles. So number one, it's called innercise number one, it's called Take 6. And it's Take 6, calm the circuits. So when we are in this fearful state, stressed state, anxiety state, panic state, whatever that is, we know that chances are the amygdala is fired, the fear center is activated, motivational center has deactivated, your genius thinking center has deactivated because all the blood flow is moving away from that part of your brain. So what we have to do is flip the switch and turn the circuit. So first step is Take 6. So you sit quietly and take 6 to 10 deep breaths in a rhythmic fashion. 6 to 10. Why 6 to 10? Well, when the fear circuit is on, you have to actually calm that circuit down so you can activate the other circuits. You can't have both circuits on at the same time for the most part. And so the first thing to do is go to step one, it's calm the circuits, just breathe. So let's say you do that 10 times. That's innercise number one. But innercise number two is a really good, it's called AIA, and I pronounce it Aya. Aya. So what's Aya? Aya is activating another part of your brain called the part of your brain that can be aware of itself. So you start to get into awareness. So you're aware, oh, wow, I'm anxious. I'm afraid. What are you afraid of? I'm afraid of failing. I'm afraid of being judged. I'm afraid. In a calm state. See, when the stress circuit is on, you're in a reactive state. When you deactivate that stress circuit, you can be in a calm state that can respond instead of being in a reactive state. Two different circuits in the brain. So Aya is awareness. What am I thinking? What thoughts are percolating in my mind? What am I feeling? What are my sensations? What's my behavior been that's causing me to be in this state? That's the awareness. That's A from Aya. I is, and this is where your power is. Just everybody pay close attention. Aya is, what's my intention? Is my intention to be stressed, fearful, anxiety? Is that my intention? Breathe. Breathe. No, that's not my intention. I want to be happy. I want to be vibrant. I want to do my best, be my best, have and give as much as I can. That's my intention. Good, 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 good. Start to feel that. And then the next A in Aya is action. What's one thing? Not 10. What's one thing you could do right now to move you one step towards what you want to do, be, have, or become? So you do calm the circuits first, just to give yourself the ability to respond. Then you go Aya, and then you can go, okay, I could do one thing. Well, if you could do one thing right now, can you possibly do another one tomorrow? Yeah. So once you practice just getting the neurochemistry right, getting the circuits working well, working for you. You're able to activate other parts of your brain, the imagination, creativity, the Einstein. I have Einstein over here because, you know, the left prefrontal cortex, that's the part of our brain that's like the GPS to the universe, and the part of our brain that is the CEO, the executive, that come up with, well, I could do this, but I could also do that. You see, that part of your brain shuts down when the other Frankenstein opens up. So you either have Einstein working or Frankenstein working. Frankenstein wants to keep you stuck, playing small, living in your misery and sorrow or depression. Einstein wants to figure out how can I solve the riddles of the universe. Both are powerful. Both need to be learned how to use properly.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up, and I want to delve a little bit deeper into this concept because I think it's so vitally important and it's hard to grasp. So this concept of disappointment avoidance, and the fact that it's possible to have your whole life directed in a way that is about avoiding disappointment versus creating, you know, kind of consciously creating your ideal life. And these are really totally different, you know, ways of being oriented to the world. So can you explain a little bit about how that works?
Yeah. When you think about being a child, you know, it's probably, let's go back to being children. You know, for the most part, you have, you know, your beautiful son, you know, a year-old son. He's just in his environment, just absorbing everything. He's not really starting thinking, why am I doing this? Why am I not doing this? Is this good? Is this bad? But he's learning, you know, Mateo, don't do that, sweetheart. Mateo, okay, you can have that. No, don't do that. So he's learning this concept of move towards this, move away from that. So he's learning this concept of what his environment, his teachers, his parents, his protectors are giving him as what to move towards, what to move away from. And so what happens, you know, when we're, you know, 3 years old, 5 years old, 7 years old, 9 years old, we try certain things. And what do most children do after they like fall off a bike or they do something that they're not sure how to react? They look at their parent and am I going to get reprimanded or am I going to get praise? Right? And we want to have the people around us love us because it feels good. And so when we disappoint ourselves, because we tried something and failed, but we didn't learn that failure is nothing more than feedback, most people don't disassociate what they tried with who they are. And failure is just feedback. But most people don't learn that. So the frame they have for failure is bad and succeeding is good. Well, there's sometimes success could be bad. We won't go there. And so disappointment avoidance fits into one of the biggest fears that people have is if I try my best and it doesn't work out, most people think that, well, I guess I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not worthy. I can't figure this out. And they create this personal relationship with effort and failure and identity. And so why would I want to do something that's going to strip away another piece of my self-worth? I've freaking stripped enough of those away. I need to put some back on. So whenever we have a goal that we don't know how to achieve or a goal that we tried before and failed because we may have done something wrong, we were too young, too old, whatever the case might be, the reaction of the brain is avoidance of pain, emotional, physical, whatever. First, that's the first line of defense. That is the default of the brain. So what do? Take 6. Calm the circuit first. Calm the fear circuit first. Calm the uncertainty circuit first. Calm the stress, anxiety circuit first. That's step 1. Then Aya, awareness of thoughts, feelings, emotions, sensations, behaviors. What's my intention? My intention is to achieve the goal. My intention is to be successful. My intention is to learn what I need to learn. My intention is to get the help that I need. What's one action step you can move forward? We can use this framework for absolutely everything as 2 amazing innercises of many.
Beautiful. Yeah, you know, one thing that strikes me is just, it's remarkable how many different ways it's possible for our brains to be wired in, and how it completely changes our orientation to the world. And I'll give you one example of what I mean. When I was in my PhD program for clinical psychology, we did a lot of work around understanding personality development, different kinds of personalities, narcissistic personalities, depressive personalities, what are called schizoid personalities, in kind of traditional psychoanalytic thinking, and then even things like masochistic personalities. And a masochistic personality is a really interesting thing. And by the way, to be clear for everyone listening, I'm not talking about personality disorders. I'm talking about personality structures, ways of orienting yourself to the world, ways of defending the ego, ways of attaining one's needs, pleasure, love, and so on. And it's possible to be oriented to the world in radically different ways. And this masochistic personality kind of gives some insight into that. And what it is, if you've ever known someone who always seems to be having some crisis, there's always something wrong, there's always some big drama in their life. Every 2 days, they're calling you and crying, and there's some new disaster. And the thinking on this kind of personality, from a traditional kind of psychoanalytic view, is that if you imagine like a little girl, a 4 or 5 year old girl who has parents who are otherwise very neglectful and just don't pay much attention to her, don't give her much love. And then one day she falls off her bike and, skins her knee and breaks her arm or something like that. And then all of a sudden the parents rush over and, oh my gosh, are you okay? What can we do for you? Let's take care of you. And then, for a few weeks after that, when she's in the cast and they're nursing injuries, they're paying a lot of attention to her, giving her a lot of love. If that kind of experience happens enough, it's possible for the brain to actually learn, I can get love and attention and the things that I need in life by having problems, by having pain, by me suffering. I will get things that I want. So, I mean, my point in pointing this kind of personality out is that it's possible to be wired for your brain to get wired in a way that is ultimately almost totally counterproductive and is guaranteed to cause you a massive amount of suffering in your life. And so, I think where I'm going with this is neuroplasticity, and just kind of the recognition that it's possible to unlearn certain ways of being if you first recognize it and you want to be in a different, kind of way of relating to other people and the world around you. We have this neuroplasticity element that gives us this possibility for change. And I think this really lends itself well to your work, which is really all about how can we use this concept of neuroplasticity to rewire our brain to get the kind of life we want.
Yeah, and I get questions all over the world. Does that mean that if somebody is making $50,000 a year, that's what they are neuroplasticity-wise wired to earn? Yeah. Even though they're capable of achieving 100 or 200,000? Yeah. So if somebody is making $1 million a year, that means they have become wired to earn that? Yeah. And can that be created? Yes. And the opposite of that is somebody who wins the lottery, and 86% of them, because they don't have the neural network of winning that or having that money, and that being their normal environment, 86% will lose the money within 3 years and say it's the worst experience of their life.
Wow.
Because the environment outside of the money, the cars, the houses, the trips, doesn't match the internal pattern in their brain. So they get rid of all of it and they wonder what happened. And it's the exact polar opposite of somebody who's a millionaire who loses their money, and all of a sudden within a 2 or 3 or 4 year period of time, they're millionaires again, because that neural structure is already in place and they have to rise to the level of the neuroplasticity. Your brain makes 100% certain, 100% certain, not 92, 100% certain that your external world matches the internal map. And the internal map is neuroplasticity wiring in the brain, or the brain cells wiring, which is neuroplasticity in the brain. So
yeah, fascinating.
Activate those neuroplasticity or the neuroplasticity switch. Now we know what it takes to do that.
Hmm. And I think one of the big barriers here is most people are totally unconscious of whatever their programming is, and they're behaving in these ways without actually having any awareness of their behavior patterns and their brain set points and how their brain is wired to get pleasure and love and affection and happiness in life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
everybody will be able to fill this blank, okay, in the United States and Canada anyways. We are creatures of
habit.
Well, what is a habit? It's a pattern in the brain that's been reinforced over time that then just runs automatically without thought. And 95+% of our daily thoughts, emotions, behaviors are patterns that are just running themselves to conserve energy, which is brain's number 2 law.
So how does this factor into your work? Because I think this is a perfect segue. So
Sure.
Let's talk about what you do. We've talked about all these problems and, kind of all these different ways the brain can be wired. How does this actually figure into what you do, and how do you work on fixing these problems?
Yeah. So the body of work that I'm fascinated with, how can we live in a world right now where all the how to exists? So for example, how to solve this Rubik's Cube, how to solve this Rubik's Cube, right? We know how. So how is it possible that we know how to lose weight and keep it off? How is it we know how to double or triple our income? How is it we know how to have a great relationship, but we don't do what we know how? Like, what's happening in here, right? So what I do, my company Neurogym, works with some of the top researchers in the world on understanding self-esteem, self-worth, doubts, fears, anxieties, stress, belief systems, limiting beliefs, empowering beliefs, how these things drive behavior, and how do we help people develop these empowering beliefs, emotional management, and behaviors to double, triple, quadruple their income or business, to get healthier, to be happier. That's what we do. And fortunately, I get to work with people from Harvard and Oxford and Pepperdine and Stanford and all the great universities in the world because of what we do. And then we bring that information to the general public and to corporations so that the individual can actually take what we learn and apply it in their life. One of the things that we focus on a lot is I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. And so I've been fortunate to have made some good amounts of money that gives me some freedoms in my life. And so we teach people how to make more money, whether they're 24 years old or 81 years old, like many of our clients. And we focus not necessarily on money-making skills, but we focus on the things that have to happen in your mind that will allow you to actually take action and overcome the things that are holding you back.
Beautiful. So I know that just a few days ago, you did something called the brain-a-thon, which is the big event of the year where you do this big event. You bring in neuroscientists, world-renowned neuroscientists and neuroscience experts from all over the world, and you have them on this live event. And it just happened a few days ago on last Saturday, I believe. And it was excellent. I can say myself that now that I've watched it, some of these segments with these neuroscience experts were mind-blowing. So can people get access to a replay of that? I think you still have it going on until this coming weekend. Is that correct?
We actually have an encore presentation this weekend. We had over 100,000 people sign up for it. And many of them that signed up couldn't make it, so we decided to do an encore presentation. So we'll provide you a link for anybody who's watching. It's free. They can sign up, and it's going to be about 7.5 hours, 8 hours. People can sign up and just join us for 2 hours, go off and do some stuff, come back. And they'll learn the most advanced ways to recognize what's holding them back and then learn how to release it for good so that they are empowered versus disempowered. There's a lot of little things we could do temporarily, but I like permanent change of the positive kind. And so we're going to teach people, for example, Dr. Sarah Mackay from Oxford is one of the leading experts in the world on neuroplasticity and how to refire the brain, to rewire it with positivity, with empowering habits, empowering skills. Dr. Srini Pillai from Harvard is going to be talking about the subconscious mind and how to access and unlock its amazing genius potential.
Yeah, he's awesome, by the way.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed his segment.
We've got, Dr. Shelley Carson, also from Harvard, on creativity, imagination, and the brain, how to unlock that part of your brain so you can come up with solutions to becoming wealthier versus all the reasons why you can't be. So, and then we've got a lot of our clients that are, learning innercises to be able to get what they want in life faster and easier. So we'll give everybody a link if they want to join us.
Yeah, actually, your team just sent me a link here, so I have it. It's brain-a-thon123.com/Ari. So brain-a-thon, all one word, brain, the letter A, then thon, THON.com/Ari. Yes.
No, brain-a-thon 123.
Did I skip the 123? Okay, brain-a-thon123.com/Ari. So, John, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure to just to hang out with you and have a nice conversation, and we're recording it so we get to share it with the world. But as always, such a pleasure, my friend, and thank you so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom with everyone.
Thank you, Ari. Thank you for the amazing love and work that you do in the world. You're a shining light that's helping millions of people. So thank you for the work you do too, my friend.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too.